Just give me a sense. What do you want to? Is there any direction you want to go? Do you want to talk about kids,
Well,
about adults,
absolutely.
about?
Yes, absolutely. Because I can tell you, I watched many videos of yours. So I
Okay.
would say YouTube is currently clocked with your interview. Well,
True.
and what I found out actually that you are very sweet talker and very passionate about your subject. So that's why I would like to give it a little bit of structure, if you don't mind.
Okay. Sure.
Yes. So let's discuss. There are so many issues, well, in your book that maybe first of all I have to introduce you to Bulgarian viewers. Just a
Okay.
few, just a few lines, Professor Hyde.
Hmm.
So, first of all, thank you for accepting and being willing to discuss some issues regarding Gen Zs. These are actually people who were born after 1995. You're a professor of social psychology at Stern School of Business at New York University and author of a few very successful books, including Righteous Mind. In 2024, you published The Anxious Generation, and I'm going to quote here, arguing that the rise of smartphones and overprotective parenting has led to a rewiring of childhood and increased mental illness. Well, the book has stirred up a huge debate in our society and has led to some practical issues, some practical steps in the legislation. Well, the book already been translated into Bulgarian language, and today, yes, yes, please hold it for me. Thank you very much. Yes, fantastic. Yes, that's such a pleasure having you today. And my humble goal is not only to promote your book into Bulgarian book market, but also to disentangle with you the complicated matter of so-called Gen Z. And first of all, I would like just to quote something that I found in internet. So this is a very young lady, Sophie, born in 2000. So she says, when you wake up in the morning, first you turn off your phone alarm, then you turn your alarm off and you think, I'm already on my phone. So you check Instagram and you check snapshot and that's how the day starts. Well, tell me why social media is such an integral part to Gen Z's life.
Um, what young people care most about is their relationships and their status. I've often noticed that whenever I have the chance to get any feedback on what people think about me, how is my book doing on Amazon? What did people say about my last tweet? I can't stop myself from going there. I'll be working, I'll say, "Oh, I want to go there. What are people saying about me?" And I'm a 61-year-old man who's very secure in my job. A teenager is entirely focused on what are people thinking about me? What are people saying about me? How am I doing?
Yeah.
And it used to be that the only way you could find that out is by talking with your friends, and you talk with your friends. But now a number of large corporations have figured out how to take control of all of teenage social life, move it onto their platform. They're fighting each other to get more of it. And three giant companies, TikTok, Meta, and Snapchat, have taken up most of American childhood. I don't know which are the popular ones in your country. And so,
All of them.
okay,
Unfortunately, all of
yeah,
them. Yeah.
yeah. So, but the point is that um, teenage social development is an incredibly important part of development, and it should proceed in the real world with face-to-face interactions. But now it proceeds in asynchronous, algorithm-mediated platforms that are driving everyone crazy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Well, do you think that Gen Z is coping worse with the social situation than previous generations?
Oh, much, much worse. By every measure, including what they themselves say. A really important fact about Gen Z is that they are not in denial. They don't defend their way of living. They don't like their way of living. They see the problems. They know what social media is doing to them, but they feel trapped. And this is at the heart of my book, is the idea of collective action traps or collective action problems. They know it's bad for them, but if they quit, then they're isolated. So they choose to stay on and drink the poison rather than leave and, in a sense, starve to death socially. This
Yeah.
is a nasty trap that the companies have set. They did this deliberately. We have quotations from inside the companies. We know that they did this deliberately. And so Gen Z is in terrible, terrible shape, not just in terms of their mental health. We know everybody's talking about the mental health, but also in their ability to pay attention or read a book. I'm now finding that the biggest damage, it may not be the mental health. The biggest damage may be the destruction of the human capacity to pay attention for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. My students at NYU, they do, as you say, they start their day with their phone. They start by checking, 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 checking before they get out of bed. And at night, before they go to bed, what are they doing? Checking, 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 and
Yeah.
then eventually their eyes close. And in between, what are they doing? A lot of it is just this.
Yeah,
And
but
so it's
it's become a huge obsession, isn't it? So, because, well, let's just go, historically to another book that was hugely popular and still is very popular. It's also been translated into Bulgarian language. And this is Anas Lemke's book. And I'll tell you exactly, Dopamine Nation, Finding Balance in the Age of Indulgence. So
yes,
published in 2021. Yeah. And actually, what she says there, because she's a psychiatrist, she discusses all these issues, all these neuronal mechanisms behind all this addiction. And if I quote her, because she put it very nicely, she said, social media is a drug that exploits the brain's evolutionary need for interpersonal connection.
exactly.
So, yeah,
Yes. That book, Anna Lemke, is one of America's greatest addiction researchers. She's a professor at Stanford. She writes beautifully. That book is very powerful. And I urge listeners, just look her up, Lemke, Lembke. Listen to her interviews or buy her books. I
yeah,
quote her in The Anxious Generation. And so I'll just make two points from her work. One is when we apply her work to social media, we understand that the kids are getting a little bit of reinforcement, a little bit of dopamine. Oh, somebody liked my post. Oh, somebody retweeted me. Oh, somebody said something nice. But it comes on a variable ratio. And this is important. The behaviorist psychologists discovered that if you give rewards all the time, you can teach an animal to do tricks. But if you give the rewards only some of the time, then the animal learns even faster and they're more compelled to keep doing it, doing it, doing it so that they hope maybe I'll get one, I'll get a treat maybe this time. And so social media definitely uses behaviorist mechanisms to create addiction. And that's what Lemke is talking about. But the other point I want to make from Lemke
yeah,
is that we see the relevance of her work even more when we move away from social media and we move away from girls and we look at what's happening to boys. Because boys tend to crave a little bit more excitement, adventure, risk, thrill more than girls. And boys are much more easily hooked on video games, especially action video games, quick action. You're shooting someone, you're hiding from someone. So video games are very powerful deliverers of dopamine, even more than social media. Video games are designed to give you just really quick hits of dopamine to reinforce whatever you just did. So that's video games. And Lemke says, whenever you get an addiction, whenever you become addicted to something when you're young, that changes the dopamine circuits. It changes the reward mechanisms in your brain so that you are more susceptible to addiction to other things later on. So if our boys, many of them are getting addicted to video games, and look, most boys are fine on video games. I'm not saying video games are hurting most boys. They're not. But around 7 to 12% of boys, maybe more, but clearly 7 to 12% in there have what's called problematic use, meaning it's compulsive. They can't stop. It's interfering with other things. That's a very clear sign that it's dopamine, that their dopamine systems have been changed.
Yeah.
So the boys are 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 getting addicted on or like addicted on video games, and then they move on to pornography. And again, 5 or 10% of them or more get addicted to that. And in America, at least, they're all vaping. They're all consuming nicotine, and they're consuming marijuana, and they're
Yeah.
gambling. And so for boys, the addiction circuits, the dopamine circuits, are
Yeah.
devastating the boys, even more than the girls, I would say.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more with you because you touch on something really, really important. So what we call in our field of psychiatry, cross addiction. When
Yeah,
you got
that's it.
addicted to one thing, you got addicted much easily to another thing, and it's just a vicious circle, and there is no end of all this addictive behavior. So, do you think, let's say, do you reckon that all these observable traits that you discuss in your book are permanent or they are? So let's say, let's put it differently. Do you think that actually this addiction is going to last for a very long time, or in your own estimate, this is just a temporary issues during the puberty?
Mhm. Yeah.
Could that
So,
be prolonged later
yeah.
as well
So,
in the
yeah.
life and affect the life?
Yeah. So the short answer is that we don't know for sure because this is all so
Mhm.
new. But here's two things I can say with confidence. The two extreme views are wrong. One extreme view is to say the whole generation is damaged and they will never recover. It's baked in, it's changed their brains. That's it. That's wrong because we know that the brain is still malleable, at least until the mid 20s. So any young person who makes changes at the age of 20 is going to still be able to change their brain, especially the last part to develop, to sort of lock down is the prefrontal cortex. And even in your 30s and 40s, you can still do psychotherapy, you can still change. So the idea that this is permanent is clearly wrong. And I'm sure as a psychiatrist, you'd agree with that.
Yeah,
Um,
I would.
the
Yeah.
other view is, oh, they're going to grow out of it. Oh, it was just something they did when they were young. Oh, there won't be any record of it. No, this was puberty. I have a whole chapter in the book on puberty because puberty is this amazing phase of development in which you take a child brain. A child's brain is structured to be good at certain things, and then you have to convert it, and you literally it changes from the back to the front over the space of puberty, roughly ages 10 or 10 or 11 it begins, around 16 it's mostly over. So but in that phase, the early teen years, the neurons are literally sending out dendrites like crazy to figure out how do we wire up for the adult form. And if you drink a lot of alcohol when you're very young, that will interfere with the wiring of the neurons. Um, we know that from prenatal alcohol syndrome. And if you're playing video games all the time while this is happening, or if you're on social media all the time while this is happening, it's going to affect neural development. This is why I am so focused on puberty. This is why I say in the
Mhm.
book, we need four norms to protect kids. One is no smartphone before age 14, no smartphone or tablet or iPad, no touchscreen device before age 14. Let them develop in the real world.
Yeah.
No social media before 16, phone-free schools, and then far more free play, especially outdoors. We have to let their brains wire up normally during puberty. Because if they don't have a normal puberty, if they spend the first 15 years of their lives touching screens, I
Yeah.
think there's going to be a lasting effect, which we will see in this generation for the rest of their lives. On average, many individuals can get
Yeah.
better, but on average, we will see it.
On average, yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. No. From the perspective of neurobiology and neuropsychiatry, you're absolutely right because these are neuronal pathways that being constructed during the puberty, and they can stay for very long time. And actually, what I'm seeing now in my patients, in my practice, is people coming and at the age of 40, but they've already started their addiction to all these social media platforms, and they cannot, get away from this addictive behavior because it's you mentioned before, it's a dopamine rewarding thing, and there is a constant craving about getting more and more and more. But the saddest thing, there is a dopamine down regulation on the receptor level, and actually the body, the brain stop produces dopamine, and you have to somehow to get dopamine from something outside, from social media. You have to get excited, and actually at the end of the day, all these people are just miserable creatures because they are so addicted, so helpless, and they've got this anhedonia, so they don't enjoy any pleasurable experience in their life. But you see, one thing that really concerns me right now is artificial intelligence and digital revolution. What's your take on that, please?
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen in the future?
Well, so we can at least look a few steps out just by what's already happening. And so what we're already seeing is that children are pulled out of the real world by amazing things happening on their screens. And they really are amazing. When my son started playing Fortnite, the video game Fortnite, it's incredible. I mean, I would have loved to have that when I was a child. So all of that will get much, much better. The pornography is going to get much, much better. The video games will get much, much better. Social media right now is almost all written by humans, but very soon it's going to mostly be written by AI, and it's going to be much more engaging, much harder to not click on. So just if we take the current set of problems and we allow AI to make everything better, it's going to be much more addictive and take over more of children's lives. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
But looking one step further out, um, what happens when well, all young people are now using ChatGPT, even in middle school and high school in the United States. They're using ChatGPT to do their writing for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's important to understand that technology always makes things easier. And if you're an adult trying to do a job, I use ChatGPT. It makes my work easier. I'm more productive. These tools are great for adults. They make things easy. But it's very important that children not have everything easy. Children have to do hard things. They have to do things that they struggle with. They have to try and fail and try and fail and try and fail, and then they succeed, and then they get dopamine. If they get
Right.
slow dopamine that they
Yeah.
worked for, that they earned, that is the path to healthy development. But if they're just getting it quick all the time, there's no development, there's no skills. So I think however serious, so the issues that I raised in the anxious generation, I think are extremely serious on a global level, but they're going to get a lot more serious as AI comes in, which is why I say we have to address this problem this year, 2025. We don't have 2 years to work on this. We have to get age gating for social media, for pornography. We have to establish the principle that children are not adults and that these companies cannot do whatever the hell they want to children. They have to treat children differently. And until today, until now, they're not. Any
Right.
child who can say she's 13, they can do whatever the hell they want to her. And that has to stop.
Well, you're absolutely right. We'll go a little bit, just a little bit later, to talk solutions. But I would like to ask you one question because I've been thinking about it. I've been reflecting on it, and actually, this is about parents. It is about parenting. Are parents not equally actually addicted to social media?
Mhm.
Because in my own experience, so some youngsters are coming here, to see me for consultations, all this kind of thing. And then, they are usually accompanied by their parents. So they come
Mhm.
together, they stay together. I have this clinical consultation. I ask them a lot of questions. And what I can um, see actually is that parents are quite liberal, quite
Yeah.
liberal. Of course, this is a very little sample. I've got my clinical sample. I cannot generalize about the whole society. But at the same time, I know that parents are also hooked up on
Mhm.
social media, but
Yeah.
in a different way. Maybe they
That's right.
spend less time than
Yeah.
children, but still, you
Mhm.
see, there is a point, what are we going to do with these parents so liberal?
Yeah.
And this is the liberal society then
Mhm.
we are living
That's
in
right. So
now.
that's right. So there are a few points there that I'd like to respond to.
Well,
One is that it is certainly true that adults have problems with these programs too. I think they're not as addicted. Um, s- Children's entire existence depends on what's happening on social media. So that when you take a phone, sometimes when a parent takes a phone away from a child and says, "No, I'm taking it away," it sometimes happens that the child commits suicide because now they are
yeah,
socially dead. So children, it's become like their oxygen. I don't think there are many adults where if they couldn't go on Instagram, they would kill themselves. So I don't think the level of addiction is as high. Also, adults are using it often as a tool for their work. So yes, it's affecting all of us. And interesting recent research shows that it's not just young people who are getting stupider. Young people are less able to pay attention. There was a study written up in the Financial Times 2 months ago showing that adults in Europe and the United States, adults are more illiterate. And it doesn't mean they're not reading. What it means is they're less able to read a few pages and answer questions about it because they can't think.
right.
We're all
Yeah,
overwhelmed. So I certainly want to agree with you about that. Um, and then in terms of being liberal, what I'm seeing happening is that, when you have young children, it takes a lot of time and attention. They're very demanding. And a lot of us, we have to work, we have to do this, we're busy. So almost everybody in the world discovered that if you just give the kid your phone, just give him an iPad,
right.
he's happy. You're happy. We can
Yes,
all do our business.
yes,
So in America right now, there was a survey 40% of 2-year-olds have their own iPad, their own iPad.
yeah, yeah.
40% of 2-year-olds. So you call it liberal, it might be, but I think
Mm,
it's that we all discovered to just give the kid a touchscreen device when they're 2 or 3 or 4 years old and then they get so hooked on it that it's very hard to take them off. And so by the time they're teenagers, we're like, oh, what can I do? What can I do? She gets very upset if I take it away.
yeah, absolutely. Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But can I ask you two questions?
yeah.
So I just want to share with your readership your listenership, that when I began this research, we had very good data in the United States, and I could see these graphs, like things were stable until 2012, and then rates of depression and anxiety
Yeah.
double in many cases. And we have very good data from the English speaking countries. We could see the exact same thing in all the English speaking
Yeah,
countries.
you are exemplary. Yes.
Okay. Um, and then I've gotten data from Europe. But what we
Right.
see in Europe is that it's very big in Northern Europe. We see exactly the same thing. In
Mm,
Eastern Europe, we don't. That is,
right.
I don't know about Bulgaria specifically, but I remember when we looked at Eastern Europe in general, we don't see the big increases in mental illness. Now, one possibility is you're just delayed. You're just a few years behind us. That is a possibility that I'd like you to address. The other is that um, life in Eastern Europe has been getting generally better since communism, and so
That's true. Yeah.
But I'd like you to, if you could tell me what's happened to Bulgarian young people. Are they more depressed? Is it anxiety, depression? What is it? And are they feeling disconnected? Are they feeling lonely? What do you think? What do you see happening in Bulgaria?
Well, thank you very much for this question. Well, I'll tell you. Yes, I think we are a little bit behind. Let's say 10 years behind America, let's say,
Okay.
in terms
Hmm.
of all this obsession about social media. But another thing, culturally, the way we live our life, especially in South Europe, is different. Yes, so there is more entertainment on the streets. There
Oh,
are more family gatherings. You see, this is just the culture issue.
right.
But what I've seen recently, in the recent several years, the number of depressed um, bless you,
Thank you.
the number of depressed youngsters,
Mhm.
also anxious, but majority of time, actually people with personality disorder. And most
Hmm.
of all, this is generalized anxiety disorder
Mm.
plus borderline personality disorder. So this is the main issue. So I can see a lot of eating disorders,
Okay.
a lot something that was absolutely unknown to us just 10 years ago, and
Uh,
now everybody, sticking to all these screens, to smartphone screens, and they become so miserable because
yeah.
they talk
Yeah.
about being unhappy, being not understood correctly by their parents. So there is this collision growing up between generations. And I
Mm.
think this is absolutely driven by this massive use of social media. So these are the problems. Then the suicide rates, well, they also skyrocketed
Oh,
in the recent years. And this is horrible. And to be honest, we don't know how to deal with all these kind of issues because they are somehow unknown to us in
yeah.
terms of culture, of our culture. So this is something that it's being brought into our culture, and we don't know how to correct it, how to address it correctly. Why? Because we can prescribe some medication. Okay, we can
Yeah.
give some, but this is not a solution that can really solve the problem. We can give them some psychotherapy, and we've got people well prepared to do that. But however, I think the whole young generation, Gen Z generation, is entirely unhappy
Yeah.
because there is no goal in their life. And I think, this is the existential issue, the existential problem that actually combines American youngsters and Bulgarian youngsters.
Yeah.
This is this general
Yeah.
unhappiness.
Hmm.
What I'm doing with my life, what do you think about it?
Yes. Oh, I think that's absolutely true. So thank you for that information about what's happening in Bulgaria. Um, I'm sorry to learn that your suicide rates and your eating disorder rates are going up. But it sounds like, yes, you're just part of the global trend.
Mm.
There, there have always been big cultural differences. Growing up has been very different around the world until the last 10 years. And now it's very similar. Um, I don't know about East Asia. In East Asia, they have different platforms, but in Europe and America,
Yeah,
we're all using Instagram and
yeah,
Snapchat and WhatsApp and all these programs and YouTube and TikTok. Uh, and so it's astonishing that childhood and the disorders of childhood have become very similar around the world. Technology always changes society. When the automobile came in, it changed many things about society. When the telephone came in, it changed many things about society. But those changes came in over the course of many decades. When social media came in, it's like it rewired the basic fabric of society within 5 or 10 years. Now everything is different. Our young people are sick. Our adults are feeling overwhelmed. Our politics is dysfunctional. Humans evolved to live and interact in small groups with face-to-face interaction. Technology can sometimes help that, but now that the technology is pushing people to spend all day on their phone, it's
yeah,
weakening the human connections. I was especially interested to hear you say that in Southern Europe, the young people are more integrated into the community. There's more action in the street. There's more going on. Because that has been our theory. I urge your readers and listeners to go to my Substack, my blog, which is afterbabel.com, after Babel.com, because we have several essays on how the loss of community is what exposed young people to this explosion of mental illness. And so a protective factor is binding young people into communities, whether that's religion, family events, activities outdoors after school or on weekends, because these things are so addictive that any moment that is not taken up with something else is going to end up on the phone. In
Yeah.
America, kids spend 5 hours a day just on social media, and half of our kids say that they're online almost all the time. Half of
Yeah.
them, almost all the
Wow.
time.
That's a very sad story. Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely the case. Well, I've been thinking, how could we make these youngsters part of the deal? Because I think this is the trick. How could we make them part of the deal? Because I've been thinking, okay, your solutions are brilliant. I read them, and I think they're going to work, because we can see that there is a huge shift in societal understanding about the the negative effect of social media, the chronic misuse and exposure on social media. But I've been thinking and reflecting myself, what could we do from the perspective of psychiatrists? But of course, I will ask your opinion as a psychologist and sociologist. But what I've jotted down, I'll tell you. First of all, I think we have to engage our kids on psychoeducation on a large scale. So we have to talk to them. You see, guys, this social media, all these things that create a false image about your identity,
Mhm.
it has a lasting impact on your brain, on your behavior, on your goals in life, on your motivation, on your cognitive abilities. As you mentioned, that elderly can't, and not only elderly, adult, they cannot read a text, and then somehow to abstract the main issues
Mhm.
and to underline the main points in it. And then I think, psychoeducation is really, really important because we have to talk. We have to talk openly about it.
Mhm.
Not just, parents to impose some rules on them,
Mhm.
but them to be appreciative and conscientious about
Mhm.
the negative effects of social media. And
Yeah.
second thing
Okay.
that
Now,
I've been
I'm just
thinking,
going to point out, we're almost out of
yeah.
time. I have to go, and we only have 3 minutes
Oh,
left on
I'm
the
sorry.
Zoom.
Okay.
So
So, yeah,
if I could respond to your point about
please,
education,
please do.
I mean, I think education would certainly be helpful, but I don't think it will accomplish that much. The
Right.
reason is because our minds have two different ways of working. There's the fast and the slow. In my first book, I described the mind as being divided like a small rider, which is conscious reasoning, on top of a very large elephant, which is our intuition, our emotions, our social concerns. Education speaks to the rider. So, sure, you can tell young people about all this stuff, and we should, but that's not going to change their behavior.
Mm.
What's going to change their behavior are the four norms that I'm proposing. Norm number one,
Yeah.
no smartphone before high school. Just don't give them one because once you give it to them, you can't teach them to use it safely. Norm number two, no social media before 16. Social media is wildly inappropriate for children, for minors. You're talking with strangers on a platform designed to addict you. So don't try to teach young people to use social media safely. Just say it's like gambling, it's like
Right.
smoking, it's a thing
Yeah.
for adults. This is just not a thing for children. The third norm is phone-free schools. And please tell me if in Bulgaria your students can have a phone while they're in school, even like at lunchtime. Can they be texting or talking at lunch? Because if
Yeah.
anybody can send texts during the day, then everyone has to check. And then the fourth norm, maybe will be easier in Bulgaria,
Mm.
is far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. We have to get our
Yeah.
kids out playing with each other. That's
Yeah.
what will change behavior. An education program is nice, you should do it, but it's not going to
All
really
right.
change things.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for this talk. And I'm wishing you good luck with your next book because I presume you've already started your new book, your new research. So,
Yes. If I can just say, we're almost done with
yeah,
the book because it's a children's
fantastic.
version. It's a children's
Right.
version of The Anxious Generation. We're writing a
Oh, that's
version
fantastic.
for
Wow,
children
this
who are
is the
8 to
type of
12 years old.
education, Professor Hyde. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay, but you're right. Good point. Good point. But our goal is to help children understand so that
Yeah,
then when the parents put on restrictions, the kids will
exactly.
understand.
Yes. I think, this kind of mutual efforts,
Yes,
yes,
I
will
agree
do
with
the
you on that.
trick.
We
Yeah.
will do it. All right.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Dr. Simon. What a pleasure to talk with you and to be able to speak to
It was a
to
pleasure.
the
It was a
Bulgarian
pleasure for me.
population. I hope the book is
Yes,
helpful to you and to your whole country.
it will be
Okay,
very helpful.
great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.